Let's talk about rehearsal flow. How do we create rehearsal flow in a way that rehearsals just move beautifully from start to finish? The students are engaged, they're learning, they're bought in, and we're making progress each and every rehearsal. Now, rehearsal flow is a skill. You develop this over time, but it only happens when you understand what it takes to create rehearsal flow. So I've got this document here that I'm going to create while I'm talking with you. The first thing you need to do when you want to create rehearsal flow is you want to create an effective classroom management system. You need to make sure that you have a system in place that allows the rehearsal to potentially flow. Now, you need to know how to flow a rehearsal, but that comes after your classroom management plan is put into place. So, what is a classroom management plan? Well, the first thing it's a series of guidelines and behavioral redirections. Now, the guidelines are the very clear non negotiables that you expect from your students, and they're there so they could learn. They're not there for you, they're there for them. So, what are some of the kinds of guidelines you'd like to have? Well, you want to have something about talking, unless you like a classroom where there's a lot of talking. So, you might have a guideline like raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged before you speak. I'll put that here. So, let's say it's raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged before you speak. And you would have 5 guidelines like that. I like to have follow directions the first time they are given. You need 5 of them. 5 very clear guidelines that are going to get your students to behave in a way that is effective for the rehearsal. Then you need a behavioral redirection. You need a way to redirect that behavior when the students are not following those guidelines. Notice how I said redirect as opposed to punish. We're not punishing them, we're redirecting them because ultimately, if we want to create a rehearsal flow, we want it to just naturally flow. We're not there punishing students. That would take away the positivity of the flow. So we create behavioral redirections. Some examples would be giving a warning first. The first time you're always going to give a warning. The next thing is, for me, I give out a behavioral redirection sheet. So rather than giving detention or something negative like that, I give them a form where they need to acknowledge the choices that they've made in rehearsal. And there's a way to escalate that as well to keep students on track. And I want them to start clean every day, clean slate every single day. So we've got guidelines and we have behavioral redirections. And the important framework in here is that students know that these guidelines are there to protect them, to protect their learning environment, so every student has an equal opportunity to learn. Besides that, we want a series of procedures. Procedures are all the different things that happen in your classroom that when students do it a certain way, it will prevent distractions and disruptions. For example, how students enter the classroom, how class starts, what they need to do when they need to go to the bathroom or nurse, what do they do when they have to ask a question, um, how do you hand out music? How do you collect music? Anything that would happen in your classroom is a procedure. So you have a clear procedure. Now, once you've created the guidelines and behavioral redirections and procedures, you need to make sure that you've taught them. You don't just tell them what they are, you introduce them, you teach them to the class, which means they practice them. You positively reinforce them. And then, of course, you redirect, whether it's redirecting a procedure or redirecting a behavior, you do that. Now, once you've created this system in place where students know what's expected of them and you've got those procedures nice and clean, now we focus on how do you create rehearsal flow. The way you create rehearsal flow is having a structure that is the same every time. And when I say every time, I don't mean it has to be 100% of the time, but just about every rehearsal works the same way. So let me give you some examples. I'm going to write it down. So, rehearsal flow. First of all, because you've created a procedure, students know exactly what's expected of them, how they walk directly to their assigned seat, and they sit down in their assigned seat, and then you are going to give them a signal to start the class. So we're going to say signal to start class. That's the first thing. Then you begin the same way every day. Same way every day. You begin the same way every day. I believe it should be a warm up, okay? A vocal warm up. Why? Because it gets them engaged. It could be breathing, it could be whatever you want it to be, but there's a clear warm up. Then you have clean and quick transitions into activities. So you would maybe go into oral training. They finish their vocal warm up, but oral training is just part of their vocal warm up. You also might move into sight singing. So their sight singing is on the board. So they're going straight from vocal warm up into oral training into sight singing. Now, the next thing you would do is maybe you might have announcements in your class. So you have these announcements, maybe your students are giving the announcements, maybe they're on the board, whatever it is, that's announcement time. Maybe you're taking attendance. That's when I would be taking attendance. Now, I ask my students to have their choir music out before class begins. So you can have your flow that way or during the announcements. This is when the students are taking out their stuff. Now, you might have on the board when you start the music you're working on for the day. Then they have the music in a specific order. So now we get to the music. Maybe you have a song one, which is going to be something they already have memorized, something they like. Maybe it's something you taught by rote. Maybe it's a round, something they do where you can keep their engagement the same way you kept their engagement during the warm up, the same way you kept it during the sight reading because they're looking at the board, hopefully. Uh, so they're engaged visually. So you transitioned into a song where they keep their engagement. Yes, there was a break for announcements and attendance. However, they were still engaged. By the way, if you want flow, you can also take attendance when they're sight singing, right? You can put the attendance right on the sight singing. They're looking at the board, you're taking attendance. After song one, this is where we get to the meat, the heart of the repertoire. So maybe song two, I'll say song number two. And what they're doing during song number two, this is when they're working. So maybe they're sight reading or details. I will stress that it's important to focus on the big picture first. So always big picture. So for me, that means I run through the entire piece from start to finish, or they sing just one part from start to finish, but keep them focused on the big picture before you dive into the details on whatever it is you're doing. The details could be one section in the music. It could be one part from beginning to end that they all learn. It could be articulation. It could be dynamics, but something where they're doing the work. Then I would go on to meet song number three. And again, working details, different details than song two, unless you have a theme for the day. Like today, we're working on articulation, but maybe a contrasting piece where they're working on something different. And then we get to the closer. The closer is what they're going to sing where they're not looking at their music, where they're just standing up there, they're happy, they're smiling. Now, maybe there's a part of the year where you have to give them music, that they're looking at music, but in general, the closer is something that they could just sing through the bell. So what I do is before then, I have them pack up. Now, my students bring their music with them. They don't have it the music hanging somewhere in the room. They carry their music with them. So I tell them to pack it up. But let's assume they had to take their folders and put their folders back. I would do that as well. I would have them put it back. And as they're putting it back, we would start the closer. So they would put it back, they would come back, and there would still be, let's say, 2 to 4 minutes left in the class. They're probably not going to finish. Not going to finish piece. So they're not done yet, but they're singing their hearts out. They're singing, they're engaging you the same way they did during the warm up and during the oral training and during the sight singing and during the first song. So they're probably not going to finish the song. They're going to be singing it until the bell rings. When the bell rings and you dismiss them right at the bell, they no longer have to pack up because they already packed up, so they can sing straight to the bell, as opposed to kids that normally pack up early. They're singing straight to the bell, and guess what happens? They're going to keep singing beyond the bell because they are singing, they're fully engaged, they're loving the song that they're working on, and they're going to just walk out of the room singing it. So that's going to keep them excited about singing and about choir. So we've talked about a classroom management plan, and then we talked about how to create this structure for a rehearsal flow. A few more things that you might want to think about. Okay, additional things. Number one, you want to think about the fact that pacing matters. The pacing that you work on each thing matters. So you want to spend no more than 8 minutes on a song most of the time. After pacing, we want to talk about engagement. You want to make sure that you keep all students engaged as much as possible. What does that mean? Get everyone singing most of the time. Don't work so hard with ideas of sopranos. I want you to be marking your music when we're working with the altos. Get the sopranos to sing the alto part. Get the altos to sing the soprano part. If you're concerned that the kids in your group are going to forget their part because they learn another part, they are not learning deeply. Big picture means that they understand all the parts. They should be able to switch parts easily. Okay, so keep them engaged as much as possible. 3, start before they are ready. What I mean by that is the bell rings, you start. They might not be ready, you start. You move right onto ear training right away. You move right into sight reading right away. You get to the first song, they don't need music, you start right away. You go on to the second song, you give them the starting pitches, you start even before they take the music out. Keep moving. So they are not in charge of the pacing, you are. So you take these 3 concepts on top of creating the classroom management plan that you are positively reinforcing. You are keeping students doing the things that they need to be doing in the class. And then you are creating a clear structure where they understand exactly what's going to happen each and every day. And then you focus on pacing, engagement, and always starting ahead of time. And you will have great flowing rehearsals. If you would like to learn more about how to do this and get step-by-step guidance on every aspect of building a successful choral program, which includes classroom management, it includes vocal technique and music literacy and creating student officers and grading them in a way where they're motivated to work harder, all of the things that create a successful program, then check out my Choral Clarity Collective. I have the link there, and I hope that this was helpful and that you will check out the collective and join soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.